Well, the International of Sign. Let's talk about it now, right? So, anyway, we are going to get started with some of our program. We appreciate everybody coming here today to celebrate the life and times of the great Dr. Terry Ovitt. We can see that he was very loved and respected by his community, loved by his family. I'm happy to be here to help celebrate with you guys and meet friends. You probably haven't seen me in 30 years. But I'm married to Terry's oldest daughter, Debbie. My name's Carl Lang, and we live in Dallas, Texas now. So, yeah, and I've had the honor of calling Terry my father-in-law for the last almost 30 years, right, Debbie? 29 years. I'm rounding up. But it's been a wonderful 30 years to get to know the man and everything that he's come to be. And he also is the pop-up to my two kids, Amanda, who's 23, and Nicholas, who's 21. So it's been a wonderful ride knowing Terry. So I'm happy to kind of share. I'm going to share a couple memories. Judy has asked a couple of friends and family to come up and talk. So after me, we'll have 3 or 4 more speakers to come up and give their thoughts about Terry. So I guess I'll begin with probably 30 years ago, going back to when Debbie and I were dating. We were long distance dating, and I decided to pull the trigger, and I called him. I was living in Florida at the time, and I was going to call him and ask him for her hand in marriage. And I got him on the phone, and Terry, his dry wit, his dry sense of humor. Hey, Carl, yeah, I'm like, Terry, I got a question for you. He's like, what's that? And I'm like, I want to ask Debbie's hand in marriage. Hello, Terry? He's like, what? Terry, huh? He's like, okay, you sure you can handle her? And I didn't know how to answer because that's Terry. I'm like, is he kidding or is he not kidding? So I'm like, well, Terry, I don't know. I'm sure going to try. I'm going to give it my best shot, but I don't know. I'm going to give it a go. He's like, well, Carl, that's the right answer. Because, marriage is a long road and it's not always perfect, but as long as you give your best shot, that's all we can ask for. So you have my blessing. And so 30 years later, here we are, and 29, see, I'm rounding up.
He wants a big ring for 30.
Sure you go. So, but 30 years later, I don't know who's handling who. I think it's the other way around, but we're still good. So that's how I got to know Terry. But I got him to know the best of Terry without all of our hours on the golf course. He is a lover of golf like I am. He's and he was always so gracious to drop what he was doing when I was coming in town to make a golf round at one of his spectacular clubs. La Paloma, Tucson Country Club, Skyline, and so it was awesome. But early on in our relationship, when I was a newlywed, he took me out golfing, and I played a couple of rounds, and I noticed he doesn't really talk to me that much. He doesn't really say much on the golf course. And here I'm running my mouth, right? And so Terry's quiet and he's playing and he seems happy. So I came home one day and I'm like, Debbie, does Terry like me? I don't think Terry likes me. Maybe he's got buyer's remorse, right? And she said, Carl, Terry. That's Terry. He doesn't have to talk to you because he likes you. He's out there having fun. He's enjoying the round. He's enjoying nature. He's enjoying your company. He's happy just being out there. He doesn't need to run his mouth about it like you would, Carl. So just be quiet and just be with Terry, right? But that's the Terry we all know and love. His quiet, assured confidence. He didn't have to do any talking. He let his actions do the talking. His professional and personal accomplishments are boundless, and he didn't have to say a word. He showed his love, he showed his devotion to his craft, to his profession, to his school, to his town, to his family, and he didn't have to say anything. So having that quiet confidence, that self-assured, that's what I'd like to take a page out of Terry's playbook, and I'd like to take that sometimes. And when I think about him, when I need to take a moment and just shut my mouth and just work through it, and that's how Terry would handle it. So we can all use that in this crazy world. So that's something I'm going to try to take from knowing Terry as long as I did. So lastly, I'll say I I can't talk about Terry without at least thanking him and Judy for the love that he showed with his little slice of heaven in San Clemente. All the countless memories we made as a family out there has been so great for my kids, my wife, my family. We saw our kids grow up there. We've had the best memories. And I'm so lucky that he was able to allow me to show my kids Southern California and that lifestyle and everything. So I'm choked up, but I'm still gonna go out there and these memories, I gotta say, they're in our heart, they're in my wife's heart, they're my kids' hearts. And that's how we're gonna carry Terry with us. We're gonna attach him to all these good memories that we have in our heart, and that's how we're gonna keep Terry living in our hearts like forever. So thank you. I appreciate your time, and here's to Dr. Terry Ovitt.
Hey,
Cheers. Thank you. So, okay, moving on. I'll shut up now. I had a lot more to say, but I was given the hook. So Dr. Paul Kapp has joined us. He is the first chairman of the University of Arizona Radiology Department, and he was Terry's mentor. He hired Terry in 1974. So he's kind enough to join us up here and say some words for Terry. Thank you, Dr. Kapp.
Thank you very much. If you'll excuse the geriatric vocal cords, but they're not what they used to be. So you'll have to bear with me. How do you try to recognize an individual who for 47 years came to this lovely community, came to have to work in a department, to work in a new medical school? Remember, there was no medical school at the University of Arizona at that time. Work in the community, work for the U of A for so long, work for the community, and most important of all, work for his family. Well, there's no way to recognize that. But Terry had no brother. My brother was in the Second World War, and I never got to know him. So Terry and I were pals for 47 years. We loved the same things in and out of the profession, and so we got to be very trusting for each other. And as a consequence, I'll try to keep Terry Ovitt in proper perspective, because none of you, I think, here realize that we had a diamond in the desert. And I'll try to amplify that a little bit. Terry grew up in Wisconsin, went to Vanderbilt in Wisconsin, and ended up at the University of Missouri, University of Minnesota, Department of Radiology, and then stayed on to do a fellowship in cardiovascular radiology. Now you must understand at that time, and many of you here do, what was medicine like in 1970, 71? There was no CAT scanner at that time. There certainly wasn't any MRI or MRA. And so medicine was mostly run by the chest films and the bone films, and thank heavens for the chest people and the orthopedic surgeons, etc., who took care of most of the problems that occurred particularly in adults. And so, with that in mind, I'll pause. You can't have him can't have him. In 1972, I had this conversation with a guy by the name of Dr. Kurt Amplatz. And those of you who might be in and out of cardiovascular imaging may realize who that might be. He was a European that developed the catheter techniques, mostly in Europe, and then came to the University of Minnesota and developed what might have been at that time the most sophisticated, unique program in the use of catheters in studying the vascular system of the whole body. At that time, there were probably one, maybe two, but I don't know of any other that had that kind of expertise. Well, I was interested in cardiac imaging at Duke at the time, and there were about 4 or 5 of us around the country that had even a remote interest in cardiac imaging. And so we'd get together once a year and kind of try to share the future. And of course, the future wasn't much because there was no cross-sectional imaging. So, but I learned that Kurt Amplatz at that time had the only teaching program that when you entered it, you left it knowing how to put a catheter in the coronary vascular system in the heart. Very few places in the country had that kind of expertise, no less to training their fellows. Very, very few. So when I came here, and I knew I had to recruit some people, and I should mention Dr. Hardwell, the president of the University of Arizona at the time, made it very clear to us. We were the founding members of the medical school here. And he says, besides building a hospital that will do appropriate patient care, and obviously with a teaching program, appropriate teaching, but obviously we want this to be a research university. And I don't want any of the leaders of this medical school coming here without significant research. And it happened. If you look at the founding fathers of this medical school, each of the chairs had a very, very strong research background, as I did too. And so when I started recruiting, I knew what Kurt Amplatz had in Minnesota. So when I would call him and say, Kurt, and I knew him a little bit then, I said, Kurt, you know that guy Terry Ovitt? No, you can't have him. No, you can't have him. By that time, he'd completed the residency, fellowship, and was appointed initially a tenured professor as an assistant professor, which is very, very hard to do. And so Kurt Amplatz and I went back and forth, because there's no question that Terry Ovitt was the guy I wanted. There wasn't anybody like him anywhere. Again, diamond in the desert. And that's what I figured, if I could get him, that would be the start of a wonderful program in interventional and cardiovascular imaging using the catheter technique. And so we went at it. And I had one heck of a time battling Kurt Amplatz. One day I would, and he would talk to me, but each time he would say, you can't have him. And I'd say, but Kurt, I need him. Don't slow him down. He's going to have a great career. Don't slow him down. And so he said, no, you can't. Well, somehow I enticed Judy. Where's Judy? Where are you, Judy? Oh, Judy. I enticed Judy primarily to come down, and it wasn't in February, I guarantee you. But it was probably during the golf tournament, which is being held as we speak at Tucson National. And so they came down. And to make a long story short, Kurt Amplatz finally agreed. Okay, Terry, you go down there, but make sure you do a good job. Well, I wasn't worried about that because I knew that we were getting. So following President Harville's instructions about also getting people who could do research, I didn't know what kind of research background Terry had, except he didn't have a whole lot, a few papers during his residency and fellowship, but nothing that made me stand upright and say, yes, he is a diamond in the desert, yet. But it didn't take very long that I learned, hey, this guy is an inquisitor. He's asking questions about everything he does. He can put a catheter through any vessel in the body. He can put a catheter in any organ of the body. And if need be, he'd put a surgical needle in to help make the diagnosis. And remember, we had nothing. We couldn't do that back in those days. And so this guy was special. And I'll never forget, he had a patient, and he was, I forgot whether he was going to needle the liver or whatever. And but I said, what are you doing, Terry? He said, I'm just waiting. I said, what are you waiting for? Are you going to go into that and get a biopsy? He said, my father. His father was a surgeon. And he said, my father taught me one thing. He said, wait before you operate. And if you looked at Terry's behavior for those 47 years, everything he ever did in all the procedures that he did for 47 years, he waited before he operated. He made sure he did his homework. And for that, yes, he showed us he was a diamond in the desert. Well, it didn't take long for the research, inquisitive nature of Terry to take hold. And before long, you knew he was doing research experiments, writing them up, publishing them in peer-reviewed journals, and he had, in fact, about 150 peer-reviewed journals. And that doesn't mean you send a manuscript to a journal and it gets published. But in peer-reviewed journals, you send a manuscript and they may send it back no good. They may send it back, you need to change a few things, and they list them. Or they accept it. So there really are peer-reviewed. These were Terry's hard journal articles that he wrote, all associated with research. So that was unique. And it didn't take many, many years for these publications to go out around the country. And I was getting letters and phone calls about this guy, Terry Ovitt. He was wanted anywhere. He could have gone anywhere he wanted to. I forgot our pediatric radiologist who went to Ohio State. Where's our chief of pediatrics? He's here. There he is. Who went to Ohio State? Remember our pediatric cardiologist? Remember? You forgot too. Anyway.
Woody Hayes.
No, Woody Hayes. This was a great, really a neat guy. He and Terry were close. He had the pediatric cardiology conference once a week, and Terry would be there with the cardiac images, and they would go at it. Well, he gets the big job at Ohio State, and he worked his tail off trying to get Terry Ovitt to come and be the chair at Ohio State. And so he and Judy actually went out twice, Judy, to investigate whether Ohio State, now they were very particular, because Terry could have gone to 15, 20 universities around the country to see if he'd be interested. He didn't go. He went to 3, 4, Judy, maybe 3, 4 that they visited, and they were only serious about 1 or 2 or 3. So they, very hard, they studied whether they wanted to leave Tucson. And as all of you know by now, they elected to stay. And Terry, we know, or rather Judy, we know it was all because of you. So, there was 47 years of this guy who indeed was a diamond in the desert. He was well known in radiologic circles throughout the country and the world. He had presentations, invitations for presentations that he had to turn down more than accept. And he was extremely busy, but he loved his teaching. He just loved his teaching. He had the cardiac cath conferences, pediatric, adult, every week, separate conferences. 2 mid-monthly conferences that he would have to give. Notwithstanding the med student conferences who were automatic. And on top of that, he had to do a day's clinical work. And I don't have to tell this number of docs who are present here. A day's clinical work has to be done that day, or you don't go home. So it wasn't unusual for Terry to, with his patient loading, he'd love to have 1 or 2 residents at the most with him doing these interventional procedures and ordinary radiology. But he liked to go home for lunch. Can you imagine all you docs here like to go home for lunch? But Terry liked to go home for lunch. Judy, do you have anything to do with that? But he loved it. And it might have been a number of patients waiting. They had to wait. He'd come back in the afternoon and try to finish the load by sunset. But if it wasn't finished, sometimes he would stay until it was finished. And sometimes he would go home and have supper. But he wouldn't stay. He would come back. And he'd come back until it was done. And if it took 10, 11, 12 o'clock, as most of you are surgeons here in the audience, you know the work has to be done before you go home. That's the nature of our specialty, and it's the nature of Terry's behavior. Now, this went on and on and on, and he, by the way, the amount of money, I hate to use the term money, but the amount of research that he generated, I added up one time and he had over $10 million of primarily NIH money. And it was a time when a dollar was worth a little more than a dollar is today. But that's the kind of research that was done. NIH was serious about it and rewarded him for his research appropriately. Well, those were the things that Terry did. Well, what are the things that he didn't do? Like, what did he do outside of his profession? Well, the one thing he did that's been appropriate already is he loved the game of golf. He just loved golf, and any chance he had of getting a few holes of golf in. But he played golf his entire life, and he and I, we'd try to go to meetings together, and if we could slip away for 9 holes or so, we did. And it was a passion for him. And in going through his file and preparing for this talk, I came upon something that Terry sent me, and he titled it Frustrating Joy. Frustrating Joy. And I'm going to read it to you because it relates to the way he felt about golf. That's how serious he took it. And I'm just going to read the first 6 lines and then the last 6 lines, because it's appropriate and it's how he felt about this dastardly difficult game. In my hand, I hold the ball, white and dimpled, rather small. Oh, how bland it does appear, this harmless-looking little sphere. By its size, I could not guess the awesome strength it does possess, but since I fell beneath its spell, I've wandered through the fires of hell. And the last 6 lines, with miles of grass on which to land, it finds a tiny patch of sand, and has me offering up my soul, if it will just drop in the hole. It's made me whimper like a pup, and swear that I will give it up, and take to drink to ease my sorrow. But the ball knows I'll be back tomorrow. That's another one of Terry's diamonds in the desert. Well, that was one of his outside things he likes to do outside of the office. A year before he retired, here was a guy, so it was his maybe 46th year with us. And Terry and I happened to be alone in his office. And I said, Terry, you've done all these wonderful things. You know, we've been together now 46 years. I said, your clinical work is great, your teaching is great, your research is great. Which of these do you like the best? He just shook his head, didn't say a thing. I said, none of them? He said, that's right, none of them. So there was a long pause. I said, which one do you like the best? And he looked up and said, residents. Residents. He liked the residents best of all. He said, I wouldn't be here were it not for the residents and the way I can teach them one-on-one, one-on-two. But that was what he chose. He liked the residents. And if you took all the residents we trained, we started in 71, God knows how many, but if you look at all the residents we trained, and we took a vote, suppose we had all our residents after 47 years, and we took a vote and said, list the faculty that you think had the most effect on you, and you list all the faculty, and I'd be somewhere in the middle, I guess. And so if you took that vote, there's no question in my mind the most valuable player in that survey would be Terry Ovitt. As much as he loved them, they loved him. If you would have opened this up to residents, there would have been 40, 50, and all the residents from this state that would have purposely come just to honor him. And that's how he felt about his importance of teaching. Well, how do I finish this? How do I honor this gem from the desert? I think we can leave, if Terry were able to come here now and say something to you people, and if he could do that, based on your relationship that you had with him, and everybody here has had a relationship with Terry Ovitt, this is what he would say. And this is from a Hopi prayer, but it pervades Terry's attitude about how he would feel now if he were here. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there, I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on the ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn's rain. When you awaken in the morning hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circling flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there, I did not die. That's the way he would feel. And each of us will go home with a legacy of Terry Ovitt tonight. And that legacy will stay with us for each of the rest of our lives. Thank you.
That was great, Dr. Cap. Terry was a rock star. Man, think about all the thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that lived longer and better lives because of the work that he did. He never really talked about it on the golf course. I mean, he wanted to talk about golf, but he never bragged about what he was doing in the medical profession. So this is an eye-opener. So we are moving from golf, and we're moving from the medicine world back to golf. And we're going to talk with, we're going to hear Dr. John Curtin. He's a longtime golf buddy with Terry, so he's going to say a few words.
The floor is yours, sir.
Judy gave me a little advice to say a couple of things about Terry's golf. But she said, be brief. I will be brief. First of all, there are two of us here who went to the same medical school, Marquette, with Terry. Tom was a classmate. I was a few years younger. I didn't know Terry in medical school. Better? Yeah. Okay. I didn't know him in medical school. I probably wouldn't have, because I spent a lot of time on the golf course, especially Friday afternoons, and I'm sure Terry was studying, maybe. It was either that or at the Ardmore Bar, which was another Friday hangout. You remember? Terry was a very good radiologist. He was not a good golfer, but he was a successful golfer. He loved the game. It didn't matter how many bad shots he hit, he loved the game. Now, he was part of our Saturday group. He was always late to the first tee, consistently late. We usually had teed off by the time he got there, and he'd join us halfway down the first fairway. He had a great classic swing. He had a nice little draw. He had a great tempo in his golf swing. He just didn't get the ball in the hole real quickly. I was going to say a few other things, but I want to end it real quickly. Old golfers get sad, and we don't get sad because we can't hit the ball anymore. We don't get sad because of a number of things. We get sad because we lose our friends. In the Saturday group, we've lost Jim, Bob, and Dick have retired from golf, and Lynn and I played yesterday in Terry's honor. Once again, he was with us because neither one of us hit the ball worth a damn. But I miss my fellow alum, I miss my fellow physician, and I miss my fellow golfing friend, Terry Ovitt. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, John. I've been there, felt that pain. Funny thing about Terry, I remember, you know how he liked to go hunting for golf balls all the time? You know, we'd be walking down the fairway, and I'm like, what the is he doing over there? Like, he's a successful doctor. He's hunting it, looking for balls, doing this. I'm like, can we get on with this game here, Terry? Or you can look for balls all day. And I'm like, you know, you're a doctor. You don't need all these balls. He's like, I've seen you play out here. Who said they were for me? God, Terry. So anyway, a couple words coming up next from Loris Maxstaller, who wanted to say a few things about Terry. So, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carl. So one of the things we've all heard about is how quiet Terry was and what a wonderful radiologist he was. I spent a lot of time in radiology with Terry. I was an older medical student, an older resident, and I knew him, so I got to have special time. But I had this patient who was very, very ill. She had a mass in her abdomen. And I was standing with an oncologist, a pathologist, myself, looking at her x-rays. Terry walks by, lymphoma, and left. He was spot on. That's all he did. The quiet man nailed it again. So Judy, I'm sorry, I had to bust in because I have to leave. But I love him. I've known him since 1976. Love you, love the girls. Kind of like Mark and Carl.
She knows how to make an exit, doesn't she? And that's what you call a drive-by diagnosis. Terry's that good, huh? All right, so we're going to wrap it up here. We got a big finish. Terry's two nephews. The better-looking one, Greg Newton, his nephew, son of Judy's sister, Barbara Van der Linden. You may know him and love him well, so he's going to bring us on home. So take it away. He's got a speech. Thank you, Dr. Cat. Better be good.
So, you guys have already stole all my thunder, and he was the quiet one that had that great smile and that great chuckle, right? I mean, just unbelievable. And I was thinking back, actually last night, Dr. Curtin, where are you? Great job. Could you just show us that golf swing one time? Just Terry's golf swing. Show us Terry's golf. I was trying to do it this morning. I just couldn't quite there. It was so beautiful. It was beautiful. Well, my brother Scott and I, both of our wives are back up in Phoenix. Mine's not feeling well, so I said, you're not coming in a room full of doctors. And Scott's, my nephew had a little accident this week, so he's coming home tonight from the hospital, so his wife's there. They're both named Debbie's. So if you want a story on that later, you'll find it out, but we have two Debbie Knutons, and it's worked out pretty well, and my daughter Stephanie and Jeff's here, so. But you know, you think about the Ovitt family, and Diamond in the desert, Jewel in the desert, I mean, they've been so special. And Debbie and Barbara, I was going to show the picture of you guys, with Scott and I, in the back of my Chevy van when I was going to Arizona State University. Okay. I'm sitting there last night, and my wife says, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm speaking in front of a bunch of cats. If for some reason they got to get a bear down or something." But I said, "You know what? I'm going to go on my Sports King draft app, and I'm going to lay a little wager on the Cats." So I put 20 on the Cats to win last night, and they lost by 43. 43 points. Good job, Cats. Judy, put me in your will for 20. So Judy called me today, and she goes, "You know, here's the deal." She goes, "My parents, and Barbara and Cliff Knudten and Terry and Judy Ovitt, we're the best of friends. And 3 of the 4 are gone. And my mom and dad were just wonderful. My aunt's sister, my mother, never said a bad word about another person. She's pretty amazing. But I found this picture, and I know you're not going to be able to see it, and this is of them golfing okay? Now, I'll leave it up here later so you can see it, but look at my dad's golf pants. Okay? I mean, he was either playing for the Globetrotters or... But the best part of this, and I'm not, this is close to gospel. It's a lie. But here's... My Aunt Judy is wearing a golf skirt with 2 frogs in a garden of a field of mushrooms. I drove by the PGA Superstore. It's in the window. You can all get it. So we used to do Christmas a lot up at our house or down here, and Thanksgiving, of course. By the way, can I say this is freaking epic? Is that okay? Okay. I never know how soft you Wildcats get, you know. That's devil. That's just talking. But I was there. Terry loaded up the plate, took 2 steps towards the table, dumped the whole thing up there. It was a typical Thanksgiving. This was a couple years ago at my house up in Scottsdale, and I was Santa, so Terry and Judy, we were all together for the holidays, and always had a great time. You know, one of the things that we did at Christmas was we had a lot of people exchange gifts, and your parents were there, and my grandparents were there, and Terry's parents were there, and we all got together and we had a great time. And this one year, we're up in Scottsdale, and the Ovitts come up, and Judy walks in. Well, Terry walks in with a box, but Judy walks in, ooh, 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 ooh. And Terry walks in like this. And the tree's over here and all the gifts over here, but no, this has got to go in the middle of the room, right? The middle of the room. We can't open it till last, can't open it till last. Terry's going. So we finally get to the end. She goes, okay, everybody get in there, open the box together, we'll take pictures. And she's standing in the fireplace, we open it up, and what is in the box? Wildcat National Championship t-shirts. And she says, you gotta wear them for 1 picture, then you can do whatever you want with them. So I 1 picture on a car wash, but that was pretty good. You know, there's something about dogs, and they're an amazing animal. And Terry just had this thing with dogs. He was so good, and he was so special with dogs. And you know, dogs are keen with sense, but every dog that saw Terry loved Terry. They just knew how gentle he was and how amazing he was. This is a picture of Judy and Terry and Sadie, and you know, he's just that kind of person. So every time I see my dog, I don't want to say I think of Uncle Terry, but I just get, you know, it's just amazing. It's just an amazing person. So, anyways, Aunt Judy, I do have one thing I want to read. Found it. Some of you don't think this was rehearsed. This was really rehearsed well. I've been in the financial services industry for 41 years, and I've done a lot of financial planning. We've delivered a lot of life insurance, but you doctors have prolonged life. You've also had the effect on your side, so I thank you for what you've done. And I've done a lot of long-term care planning, and I've done a lot of annuities. And when I walk into a room with this big of a crowd and I see these many doctors together, I get really excited. So, $10 million worth of research right here. Here we go. You know, Ecclesiastes says, Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 4 says, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance. And I think we're all doing part of that right now, and we have some mourning to do. He's such a great person. We've got Judy here and the kids here and everybody else. I know she's going to have a ton of support from all of you. And Terry's in the room with us, so he'll be here too. So bow your heads in prayer if you would, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we know that you're here with us. We ask that you enjoy having Dr. Ovitt with you in heaven as you've had him here on earth. We ask that you stay with Judy and the kids all the family, all the friends, and help us laugh and mourn and dance and weep so that we can celebrate a great person's life. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
That's why we had them close. So that completes our discussion. The bar is open. Let's have a drink and continue to talk and remember Terry. The dessert tray is being served, right? And the cat's got to get their game back on. Anyway, all right. Thank you again for coming. Thank you.